talking about the fact that they are just at breaking point, talking about not wanting to complain about care because they love their son, their autistic son, or their severely physically handicapped son that they're caring for, or their mum and dad that they're caring for, but they're just in so much debt. They can't carry on. And, and they were saying to me, please do something, Kate, which I want to be able to do, and also saying, I'm afraid, Jackie, that they couldn't believe that social care wasn't on one of those pledges. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on this programme, actually, because there was a tiny story that Madeley and the producer and I have been talking about the feeling that this was going to just get bigger, bigger. I think we've spoken about it before, haven't we? Front page of the Garda, Ministers awarded 2021 about carer scandal. Now, the nub of it, if you're not across it, is that it's very complicated when you're trying to claim a carer's benefits as to the number of hours. You have to do a certain number of hours of care, a lot, but because the living is hard, making a living, you are allowed to do some work in the evenings or whatever alongside it if you can get other people to support the person you're caring for. But the hours that you're allowed to work before your benefit is taken away is a bit of a shifting target. People find it very complicated, and subsequently people have crossed a line and then found that they've had to pay it back, which has put them in utter financial jeopardy. We interviewed carer Elizabeth Tate on this show. She looks after her son Oliver, who has Down syndrome, and she came on the show early this month to talk about the £1,623 she was made to pay back. And just to put this into context, the care allowance is around £70, am I right, Jackie, now? Something around that mark, a week. So that's what you're living on. So to suddenly find £1,600 odd pounds is undoable. So let's just have a look at what she had to say.
It was a genuine mistake. Because I was, at the time, my husband, who has sadly now passed away, he became unwell because he was a kidney transplant patient. I decided to do some extra work as a supply teacher, working ad hocly. I was so busy caring, fighting the system. Sometimes I'd be up all night. I hadn't had any sleep. And it was the last thing on my mind to keep checking.
I mean, Elizabeth puts it succinctly there. Just to qualify, £81.90 a week is the care allowance if you're caring someone for love, so that you can't work, so you get that to support yourself and the person you're caring for. Yesterday, I happened to be in Manchester, chairing a panel with people like Ria Ferdinand on about nothing to do with care. And when I couldn't get out of the conference room and I couldn't get out of the conference arena and even on the street afterwards, to the point where I was actually in tears, with people, make me cry now, with people coming up to me talking about this issue, talking about the fact that they are just at breaking point, talking about not wanting to complain about care because they love their son, their autistic son, or their severely physically handicapped son that they're caring for, or their mum and dad that they're caring for, but they're just in so much debt. They can't carry on. And, and they were saying to me, please do something, Kate, which I want to be able to do, and also saying, I'm afraid, Jackie, that they couldn't believe that social care wasn't on one of those pledges. NHS waiting list cost was there, fantastic, but as we know, social care is part of cutting those waiting lists. And they said that across the board, they see no help because there seems a complete lack of political will from all parties to solve this.
So, I mean...
Sorry.
No, Jackie. I mean, you have exemplified, and this story exemplifies the enormously difficult situation that carers find themselves in. And let's sort of remind ourselves, as you rightly do, Kate, that carers provide the equivalent of millions, probably billions of pounds worth of care that would otherwise have to be funded by taxpayers. But it's also a legitimate charge that for governments, never mind just for this government, the failure to sort out the arrangements around social care and the failure to adequately support those people who are providing unpaid care continue to be a really serious issue. And then if you add in as well what is sometimes the bureaucracy of benefit payments that doesn't always recognise the particular circumstances that individuals find themselves in, that's why you end up in this sort of a problem. Now, that's me explaining the problem. That isn't me solving the problem.
But it is... Sorry. But also, this particular story... Sorry. This particular story, which is a small part, but a terrifying part of the wider problem. I mean, the parallel lines are very different, but there's a horrible echo of the post office here. You know, nobody's been to prison in this. But ministers were warned about this scandal. People are still being persecuted. People who are living on £81 a week, often with children as well, and caring, you know, trying to survive on that, are lying awake at night, taking loans out to pay back things that somehow the system has put them in debt for, not intending to, trying to do the right thing by working alongside it. And they were warned about it in 2021. Nothing's been done about it, and people are being pursued for it. So, look, Sir Stephen Timms, the chair of the Commons Work and Pension Committee, says the government has known for years about flaws that have plagued the payment system for carers and has just allowed unpaid carers to unwittingly rack up unmanageable levels of debt and then subsequently to go for them for it. It is not the same because people haven't gone to prison as their livelihoods, but people are going under, mentally ill from this, and the government knew.
I think it's a really interesting parallel because what we have, more often than not, with a lot of these issues is a sort of faceless bureaucracy that is very, very rigid and dehumanised. And there's a computer says no, and there's a painting by numbers, and people go in and they don't feel they're being listened to. It's not sort of, yes, I understand that, I'll try and see what I can do. It's, I'm sorry, this says you're not eligible, go away.
You can't even get to speak to somebody.
And the problem with our politics,
you can't get to speak to somebody. You're forced to do it online, and then somebody comes back and says no, and you get a letter in the post, and there's no number to call.
And this is when you're already distraught, and the emotional toll of looking after a relative with issues, whatever they are, physical or mental, and trying to sort of not only earn money, but also have a bit of a life for yourself, which is where I think they deserve our support.
Of course.
I think one of the things we need to do across the political spectrum is look at what bureaucracy is not delivering. So it's very easy all the time to go for the politician at the top, whether that be, you know, Jackie's party, or whether that be people on the other side, demonise them, say, if only there was a different man or woman in that job, it'd all be fine. It's not. You can read stories by the NHS today. There are appalling things going on, and it's not because of lack of willpower, frankly, from the Conservatives or Labour. It's because when that money goes down the system, it gets lost in so many different places.
Absolutely.
And humanity gets lost.
And I mean, can I just quote one more bit, Jackie, before you respond? The committee published an 8-page letter that it sent to Mel Stride, asking the DW to introduce wholesale reforms. This report was commissioned in 2019 after a parliamentary inquiry said there was a failure to understand the human misery and desperate hardship inflicted on tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people. Now, we know that Mel Stride has taken a position of saying that we have to cut benefits.
Yes.
Is it connected to that?
But I don't even think that Mel Stride, much as I, you know, don't support a lot of the things that he does, would want to see this situation happening.
Of course.
I think Ito's right. I think actually probably ministers who, of course, will also be doing constituency surgeries, and every single member of Parliament will be having carers coming to talk to them in their constituency surgeries. So this is not by way of excusing politicians, because we do expect them to find the answers, to make the bureaucracy more human than it clearly is at the moment. But when you do get a sort of real emphasis on let's clamp down on benefit fraud, let's make sure people are working. It does seem a bit ironic that people are actually working, they're taking their responsibilities, and a small mistake that they probably didn't really even realise they were making in the first place racks up this debt.
Terrible debt.
I don't think anybody wants that to happen.
No,
the question is, how do you actually solve it?
Right, and being able to speak to somebody and having somebody to act on your behalf is important too, and there's certainly nobody around to do that for you. But it is a political solution, ultimately, that could help. We can't blame the bureaucrats. You've got the power, right?
No, and that's what politicians need to do, is to get a grip on a system. And that part of that was lost during lockdown when, you know, people were not turning up at work. they were told not to initially, but a lot of them have not gone back to work in an office where it's easy to sort of run things. A lot of backlogs have been created. A lot of money has been missing. But, yeah, there's a lot to sort out.